Hey viewers, my name is Jesus, and today we're going to be going over the basics of blood pressure and how to take someone's resting blood pressure. To begin, I'd like to introduce the equipment necessary to measure blood pressure. This right here is a stethoscope. As you can see, it is already labeled. For time's sake, we will focus on the three main parts that we will utilize to hear what we will know as the Korsakoff sounds. We will use the bound diaphragm, which will actually pick up the sounds, while our earbuds will actually let us hear the sounds. One main thing to remember about the earbuds is that you want them pointing away from you. That way you're actually able to hear the sounds. Now that I have introduced the stethoscope, I will now introduce the sphygmomanometer. The sphygmomanometer is already labeled. We will focus on the pump and the valve, gauge or what is known as a dial, the bladder, and proper cuff sizing, which will help us attain accurate measurements. The pump, or what is better known as the inflation bulb, will be used to inflate the bladder within the cuff. On the bulb is a valve which will be used to release air from the bladder after inflated to the desirable millimeters of mercury, which we will further discuss in our scenario. The gauge, or dial, will be used to obtain your systolic, which is the first thumping sound you hear, and diastolic numbers, the last thumping sound you hear while measuring. Like previously mentioned, you want to check for proper cuff sizes for accurate measurements. It is important to understand the markings on the blood pressure cuff. Anything outside of the index mark will determine whether the cuff is either too big or too small. Now we're going to move on to the actual process of taking blood pressure. You want to make sure that your subject's feet are flat on the floor, back supported, and their arms that you're taking measurement on is at or above heart levels. You also want to make sure that the subject has not ingested caffeine, has not been smoking, or has had any alcohol. Now that your subject's been seated for 5 minutes, you go ahead and begin the placement of the cuff. As you're placing the cuff, make sure that the left artery marking on the cuff is aligned with the subject's brachial artery. You're now going to begin the process of taking blood pressure. You're going to go ahead and place the diaphragm on the subject's brachial artery. You will then inflate the cuff by repeatedly squeezing the pump. You will squeeze up to 180 millimeters of mercury, and you will slowly release at 2 to 5 millimeters of mercury per second. We will then listen for the Korsakoff sounds. The first sound will be your systolic sound, while the last sound you hear will be the diastolic sound. With that measurement, I have just received a measurement of 90/60.